Hello, this is Alessandrina, and today I wanted to talk about expectations and how to understand why we create expectations, why expectations are not helpful or beneficial to our life process and to our relationship process, and how to release them and the benefit of releasing them. So, first of all, if we understand what expectations are and that expectations are different than intentions, that can be very helpful. When we create an expectation, we essentially we want something to happen a certain way, and in that process we don't realize what's driving, what's motivating the expectation. So if we expect to have a certain job, if we expect people to behave a certain way with us, if we expect ourselves to be able to achieve certain things, that kind of process of expecting is a process that is driven and motivated by fear, the fear of not having that which we expect to have. And so when we go into that process of reacting to our own fears of not having what we want and expecting to have what we want, then there's going to be a lot of pressure, a lot of tension, a lot of stress, anxiety, and also the moment that we have expectation, most likely we will experience disappointment or self-judgment or judgment of others when we or they don't meet our expectations. So it's not going to help us, it's not going to feel good, and it's definitely not going to be supportive of us actually achieving our goals, our intentions. So a simple way to start to understand if you're having expectations, first of all, is to see if you have negative emotions when something that you want is not happening, or when something that you'd like to be a certain way is not the way that it is. You or someone else, their behavior, their tendencies, their patterns. If you have an expectation, then you will be disappointed, you will potentially get angry, or you will get sad, or you will feel frustrated, or you will be judgmental and potentially punishing towards either yourself or the person who is not meeting your expectation. So once you realize that, then you start to map your process of expectation, generally speaking, that you have expectation, that you've inherited and been conditioned into having expectation. And then you start to see what's driving your process of expectation, what you might be fearing. So fearing not having something, fearing someone not being a certain way, fearing yourself not essentially being at the level that you want to be at, or not meeting your own expectation of your self-image. So once you start making an inventory of those expectations and the fears that are driving them, then your opportunity here is to actually clear the fears that are driving those expectations. And once you realize that the expectations are not necessary and not beneficial in your process of attaining your intentions and goals in life, then it becomes easier to actually release your expectations and to become aware of where you've been having expectations. So most likely in a relationship dynamic, or generally speaking in the world, when something happens and you react to it with either a disappointment, anger, sadness, or any negative emotion, it is going to mean that there was an expectation. Instead of consciously being aware of the dynamics, the interactions, the different factors, influences that led to the situation or to the dynamic that you are experiencing, rather than just seeing that as what is, and then kind of like understanding the different components, and then working through each one of the influences and factors, so that you can then let's say align yourself, align the relationship, or align your life in a way that you can achieve your intentions and goals. So the tendency for most people is to actually react and say, oh, things are not the way I want them to be or the way I expect them to be. And so that's an indication that there is expectation, and realizing that is wonderful, because then you can clear the fears of your expectations not being met, what it means. So for instance, if someone expects another person to always be kind to them, to always speak kindly, that expectation is a way of avoiding the pain of someone speaking unkindly to us, and what we project about that, our interpretations about it. And so by trying to avoid, by trying to escape our own pain, our own fear of being talked to unkindly, or someone supposedly not loving us, not caring about us because of them speaking unkindly, then we will create this expectation that everyone should talk to us kindly all the time. And of course, life doesn't work like that, and people's patterns and egos and ways of operating are just the way that they are based on our conditioning, and therefore it's going to be conflict producing to have any expectation. So once we realize that the expectations are going to generate more conflict, more inner conflict and outer conflict in the world, and some level of stress, anxiety, and just not having a smooth flow in life, then we can go through the process of once again clearing the fears, so that then the expectations disappear. If there's no fear, there's really no expectation. If we release the fear that are tied to the expectation, then the expectations can go. Now, oftentimes, the question for a lot of people is that, well, if I don't have expectations, then I'll never achieve my intentions and goals, or people will never be the way that I want them to be, or I'll never be the way that I want to be, and the way that I feel safe being. And of course, that's not true. And actually, having expectation doesn't help you achieve those things. It may feel like that. We may feel more in control when we have expectations of ourselves, situations, and others. And ultimately, by releasing our expectations, there is more capacity, more space, more room to achieve our intentions and goals. So the expectations are not helping us, and they're not beneficial. They breed conflict and negative emotions and negative projections, and they kind of set us on a path to be in conflict and to be disappointed and to not feel good. And in that process, no one is being helped. You're not being helped. Other people that you are either expecting from, or that you're interacting with, when you have your own self-expectations, that's not going to allow for harmonious, loving, caring, conscious, and mindful relationships. And so what happens once you realize that, and you allow yourself to feel that, and over time, it takes time, because the conditioning and especially in terms of expectations, how much we are taught to expect, and how much actually in the world it is said that if you expect, then things will happen the way that you want them to happen, because of you're going against the grain of the conditioning. Once you realize that, and you start to integrate that more deeply, and you start to really realize that is a deep truth, and that you don't need expectations, and that expectations actually bring more pain and more suffering, then there's the opportunity to shift. And that shift is very important and very simple, and at the same time, because of the conditioning, it can feel like there's a lot of resistance, and it doesn't feel good, because we start to project, if I don't expect, then I won't get what I want, or if I don't expect, then I won't feel good. And things won't unfold in the beneficial ways that I expect or want them to. And that's simply not true. Actually, when you create the space, when you have this more open state of beingness where there's less pressure and less tension in your body, in your mind, in your emotions. You actually have more capacity to achieve and to be able to see and perceive what is possible, what is available to you, what the steps are. So your focus now shifts. Instead of being, I expect this and I want it to be this way, and then kind of looking for all the ways in which your expectations are not being met, and kind of getting stuck in that loop of negative reaction and emotion, that energy is actually recalled to yourself. And now that energy is available to be focused and really applied to actually achieving your intentions and goals. So releasing expectations doesn't mean that the things that you want most in your life, that are most meaningful to you, won't happen. On the contrary, when you release your expectations by releasing the fears that drive those expectations, you are now liberating energy, and that energy becomes available to you to actually be applied and focused on what you truly want, and understanding, well, how do I get there? So if we're expecting and then getting disappointed and reacting, and we're in that cycle and projecting more disappointment, then that's where our energy is. If instead we reclaim that energy, we ground that energy back into our system, and then we ask ourselves, well, these are my intentions. How do I get there? What does that feel like? What are the specific steps for me to take to actually achieve that, without expecting people to be different than they are, or yourself to be different than they are, without blaming or judging ourselves or others, without being reactive or essentially rejecting the conditioning, our conditioning and someone else's conditioning. Instead, just simply seeing what is and what is available, and what is and what is available, what can be done to get to where you want to go. Just like, imagine if you were on a path and all of a sudden there was something on your path, like a big boulder, and you wanted to go taking that path to a specific location. If you spent your time saying this rock shouldn't be there, and this is bad, and this is wrong, and this is not what I expected, and now I'm going to just be angry at the rock and be angry at this situation and feel disempowered and victimized by this situation, well, that wouldn't help you get to your location, to the destination that you want to get to. Instead, if you realize, oh, there's a rock on this path, and I'm still intending to get to this location, and how can I get there? So then you could find out what are your options. Maybe there's another path, so you could go around the rock and be able to still get to your destination. Maybe you would find that there's a way to move the rock out of the path, and the rock is really a metaphor for our conditioning and our patterns and our essentially the blocks inside of us that come on the path to achieving something that we want, to achieving our intentions and goals. So if we get angry at the rock for being there, and if we start to essentially expect that it shouldn't be there, then we're just focused on that, and that's not going to help, because the rock is there. So then it's about, what do we do with this rock? What are the steps to actually continue to get to the destination? Whether there's another path, whether we move the rock, whether we do something with the rock, whatever it might be, what matters is that now you're applying your time, your energy, your resources, your focus on really getting to the destination, instead of getting lost in the reaction to your expectation not being met. So this is simple, this process, and at the same time, because of the conditioning, there can be a tremendous amount of resistance and reactivity. So it's about working with the reactivity and also mapping your process of expectation. And once you do that, then you start to really liberate more and more energy, and then that energy is available in every moment to live your life in a way that is not expecting of yourself or others or life in general. And then you can work with what is and what is unfolding in a state of consciousness instead of in a program, in a state of conditioning where you're just continuously projecting, expecting, and reacting. So when we project, expect, and react, then we're constantly caught up in that cycle, and that really doesn't help us to get where we want to go. And this is very applicable to relationship dynamics and how much unconsciously and subconsciously we've learned to expect in our relationship things to be a certain way, people to be a certain way, and it just isn't the way that relationships work. And so the less expectations we have in relationship, the better results we get. And again, that doesn't mean not having intentions. So being clear about your intentions in relationship and working towards those intentions in harmony and together in conscious collaboration with a partner is very important. And releasing all of your expectations of your partner and yourself is also going to help you tremendously in that process. I hope this is helpful. Sending you much love.